to feel like that. And again, that's just not realistic. So.
Right, exactly. Now, how important do you think it is to eat 3 meals a day and 3 snacks a day?
You know, that's an interesting question, too. We're told so many different things. You know, one person says you should eat 6 meals a day. Someone else says you should eat 3 meals and a couple of snacks here and there. You know, and I honestly feel like you can always find supporting evidence for whatever plan you want to be on, right? I think, again, one of the most important things we can do is eat when we're hungry. Ask yourself, am I hungry now or not? Like, do I need to put more food in me if I'm not hungry? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have a little breakfast and you're cruising along and it's mid-morning and you're like, ooh, I'm a little hungry, have a little snack before lunch. But if you're cruising along and you're just fine, but you have to feel like you've got to stop and make yourself eat, I don't know if that's actually what we need to be doing. So I'm a big proponent of just kind of, again, just tuning into yourself and being aware of when you're hungry and when you're not hungry. So.
Yeah, because I'm one of those people that it's now 6:16 in Chicago, and I've yet to eat my first meal. I eat once or twice a day, and that's it. I tried to do the 3 small meals, but when I get up in the morning, I'm not hungry. People are already eating their dinner, and I'm just eating my so-called breakfast, you know. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because, you know, they say you're supposed to eat to get your metabolism going.
Right. And I was going to say, to a certain extent, I mean, I certainly wouldn't recommend not eating all day until, you know, at night. I always kind of equate it to, you know, you're driving your car. You've got to have some fuel to make yourself go, right? But you know, people always say, well, I'm not a big breakfast eater. I'm not hungry in the mornings. And so when we talk about maybe eating a little something in the morning, a little breakfast in the morning, something like that, that doesn't necessarily mean the first thing out of bed, you've got to go in the kitchen and whip up eggs and bacon and pancakes and, you know, it could be just a little bit of fruit, a handful of nuts, maybe a piece of toast, something like that, just to kind of get you going. It doesn't necessarily, or even like a little smoothie or a protein shake. Something to sort of get your body going, get your system going. Waiting until the end of the day is probably not the best thing for our metabolism. And the other component of that is a lot of times we tend to overeat when we only have that 1 meal a day because maybe this isn't the case with you exactly, but a lot of people, when they wait till the end of the day, the next time they know, they're like, oh my God, again, I'm starving. What can I eat? And it's just all bets are off at that point. So
right. Well, I think mine tends to come from working nights most of my life, and so I never ate during the day. Half the time I was asleep during the day because of working nights or late afternoons or something that shift. And for doing that for 30 years, it's kind of hard to change your body once you're getting up early and you're not used to that, and then not eating again. So I don't know. I guess another thing is that mindset thing. You just got to put it in there, and maybe instead of my 2 cups of coffee that I use for breakfast, I'll have 1 cup of coffee and maybe eat some toast or something. Who knows? I'll have to look at that and try it and see what works.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like anything, it just becomes incremental changes too. Like I said, don't go making eggs and bacon just yet, but maybe start trying to have a little something with that coffee that you're having in the morning.
Right. I'll have to try that and see if it works for me and gets me in the habit of eating, a couple meals a day and earlier in the day. Now, is it true that you should drink at least 8 cups of water a day? You hear so many different things on that as well.
No, I wouldn't prescribe necessarily a minimum amount of water that you should have a day. I would say water is very, very important to our bodies. It's very good for us. But, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to have 8, full glasses of water a day. But it is absolutely something that we should be getting probably more of than we usually are. And I always say it doesn't have to be just plain water either, though. You can make it different. You can put some apple and some cinnamon sticks in your water. You can chop up some cucumbers or limes or lemons, you know what I mean? Make it a little flavored. Throw a little mint in there. Make it, people are like, water's so boring. I don't like water.
Yeah, that's me.
Change them. Try some sparkling water here and there. That's one of my favorite things. I'm not a big fan of flat water. I like it. I like some bubbles with my water. So I think there are some different options out there to help us get a little more water into our system than we typically do.
Yeah, because I am that type of person that doesn't like water. I've even tried buying the stuff that you put into the water to flavor it, and I can drink it for so long, and then I just get aggravated or bored or whatever it is. I don't even know, and then I go back to my Diet Pop, and I know that's not good for me to drink all the time, but that's what I drink. And lately I've been trying to drink green tea. So I'm hoping that helps.
Which is excellent for you as well. But again, I think that's why I always recommend that for people who really are hooked on their diet drinks or even their regular pop is that fizzy water, that water with the bubbles in it, especially if you've got a little lime in there or something. It almost tastes like a Sprite or a 7-Up, you know what I mean? You get those bubbles, and it's almost like drinking a pop. It's not quite the same, but...
You're nearly there.
No, it's not.
Exactly. She said no, it's
You're not fooling me. David, would you like to go ahead and ask us a couple of questions that you wrote up?
Oh, yes. Steven, who were the 5 main supporters of your career?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I would probably say my mom was probably one of the first proponents of it, and then I've had a few good friends over the years who've really sort of mentored me and nurtured me along the way of, should I do this? Is this something I could do? And that sort of thing. So there's been some people along the journey, certainly, that have been big fans. So I can't think of anyone just specifically right off the bat, but...
Okay. I said, I thoroughly enjoy your philosophy about cleaning your closet first to start losing weight. Can you elaborate a little more to the audience about that?
I don't quite understand the question.
It was more the emotional level first. That went along with the emotional level first. You have to be. That's where I found it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes hand in hand. A lot of times there's, I do some classes where we not only do a workout, but we also have a very intentional talk about why we don't work out, why we don't make better choices when it comes to eating, all of these sorts of things. Like, what are our barriers? What are our, why don't we take better care of ourselves, And there is so much emotional baggage and stuff that's associated a lot of times with the things we do to ourselves, whether it's not work out or we make, bad food choices or whatever. And so I think one of the things we need to learn how to do is not just take care of ourselves physically, but emotionally as well. And I think it really does kind of come into mind, body, spirit. It's all connected, right? So you kind of work on the underlying emotional issues that, self-esteem and not feelings of not being good enough and whatever it is that we try to fill with food and things like that. So I think once you start addressing some of those underlying issues, other things will start to kind of click into place a little more.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, because a lot of us are emotional eaters or boredom eaters or whatever, and you have to start looking at that and correcting that or fixing that or dealing with that to be able to move on.
Yeah, and finding ways to deal with our stress and our emotions. You know, people say, you know, I was doing so well, and then, you know, my boss chewed me out at work, or traffic was horrible, and I'm stressed out. So as soon as I got home, I had to have cookies or a bag of chips or whatever it is, instead of, you know, making that break in there and going, okay, that was an emotion. That doesn't mean I need a bag of Oreos, right?
Right.
So,
your stomach was not growling. It was your head that was growling.
It's learning to separate those out and pay attention to what's really going on. Am I hungry or am I upset? You know, am I hungry? Am I bored? So.
Right. Exactly. And don't watch so many commercials with all the food on there. That makes you insane.
Oh, my God. It's horrible.
It is.
It's awful.
Hypnotic.
It seems like every other commercial is about food, and especially when you're hungry.
Absolutely is. Pizzas and, oh, my God, everything, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
it is.
Now, what type of exercise do you recommend for a beginner starting out?
So for a beginner starting out, I'm a big fan of body weight exercises. There's so much we can do with just ourselves and gravity. And so there's a couple of reasons why I think that's crucial or important. I guess one of the first ones being you can do it anywhere. So if you're on the road, if you're traveling, you're in a hotel room, you're at your house, you don't belong to a gym, whatever, right? There are things that can be done in your own home. There are things that can be done during those commercial breaks where they're trying to get you to eat pizza. You can get up and do a couple of squats and some push-ups. The other part of that is a lot of the body weight exercises are very functional movements. I mentioned squats, you know. Lots of people get really freaked out when you say the word squat, but really the functional movement there is sitting and standing, right? And just from the standpoint of as people age and as we get older, that's such an important thing that we're still able to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because once you sort of lose the ability to sit down and stand up, things go into decline rather rapidly. So I mean that's a functional movement that you want to be able to do for a long time. But just being able to move our own bodies through time and space is something that a lot of people have a hard time with, and it can be very challenging. And I always say that before you really need to do a loaded exercise, meaning before you need to go pick up weights and try to do something, you really need to have that foundation of being able to master your body.
Right, exactly. Then that would work for people that have desk jobs, because I noticed that, you know, over the years when I was working nights and weekends, I was a waitress, I was a bartender, I kept in great shape. And then eventually my feet got so bad with being on my feet all the time, no matter what type of shoes I wore, I ended up getting a desk job. And then through the years, I saw myself gaining more and more weight. And, you know, you don't think about doing any type of exercise when you're at work.
Right. And, you know, there's all sorts of evidence out now that tells us just how bad sitting is for us, like what it does to our spines and our hips and everything else. And that there's all sorts of things saying, you know, if you do have a desk job, you should at least get up every, you know, I think it's like every 15 or 20 minutes and just do some stretching, do some walking around, you know. But yeah, we tend to not get in a lot of exercise when we have our desk jobs. We go from the car to the desk, back to the car or the train or whatever it is we're taking to and from work. Yeah, and unless you really have an ergonomically designed desk or you have one of those standing desks or something like that, we spend a lot of time hunched over our keyboards, you know.
Right.
We've got our shoulders up and around by our ears. Our heads are bent forward. Yeah. So, again, that's another great reason that we do need to exercise, is so we can work on some of that corrective exercise to reverse some of that forward roll that we tend to get, which is so bad for our spines and our necks.
Exactly. Now, I know I'm speaking about myself a lot, but I know there's many people out there in the world that are like me.